Hello, my name's Alec. I'm the Technical Manager at Quellfire. In October 2023, it has been a pivotal month for the UK construction industry with the introduction of the Building Safety Act. The Building Safety Act is the foundation for a new safety regime. It's brought in a lot of new requirements and also has amended some of the requirements as well. This is to ensure that buildings are going to be built safely, maintained safely, and that's good for everyone that's going to be using them. What we wanted to do in this Burning Questions episode is look at the frequently asked questions that we're getting about the Building Safety Act. So we're going to go and dive into that. So just a quick disclaimer though, that this presentation is going to be focused around the information that applies to just England. It will also apply to some parts of Scotland, Ireland and Wales as well, but for here, just going to be for the UK. So let's get into it. So with the Building Safety Act, this is going to be applied to all buildings, but there's going to be specific things for what is defined as a higher risk building. So this leads very nicely into our very first question. What is a higher risk building? Buildings will be defined as higher risk if they are at least 18 metres in height or at least 7 stories, contain at least 2 residential units, are hospitals or care homes, and when we describe residential units, these are units are dwellings or any other unit of temporary accommodation. Buildings referred to as high-rise residential buildings by the Building Safety Regulator must be registered before they are occupied. Currently, hospitals and care homes are not required to be registered. For more information about this, if your building is going to be classed as a higher risk building or what sort of gateways and requirements are needed, please go to the House of Commons Library document, Building Regulations and Safety, and you can refer to the tables like this and other information and they'll explain in more detail. So that's just briefly explain what a higher risk building is. So for those that are worried about the building, you can find out and make sure you find out the right information about your building. One of the things to stress though, that this is as per this video being made. There might be in the future a change to that definition that would include other building types. So make sure you're always checking. One of the other features that has been brought into the Building Safety Act is a big key focus on responsibilities. And there's going to be a number of different responsibility positions. And one of those is called the accountable person. So what is the accountable person? The new role of accountable person refers to the individual or organisation that owns or has responsibility for a relevant higher risk building during occupation. An accountable person would also be any individual or organisation that is responsible for the repair or maintenance of common parts of the building, for example, corridors and lobbies. Now, if there's just one accountable person, then that individual or organisation is automatically deemed the principal accountable person. Where there is one or more accountable person, the individual or organisation responsible for the structure and exterior of the building will be deemed the principal accountable person. The accountable person must be identified along with all their contact details and clearly defined parts of the building that they are responsible for. Duties of an accountable person will include taking all reasonable steps to prevent the spread of fire and or structural failure and reduce the impact should any incident occur. Now, duties that will be solely to the principal accountable person will include ensuring the building is registered with the Building Safety Regulator before they are occupied, providing a safety case report, applying for the building assessment certificate, preparing residents' engagement strategies in accordance with the Code of Practice for remediation, establishing and operating an effective mandatory reporting system. More information about the role and what is the accountable person can be found using the sources that are linked in the description of this video. We're now going to look at one of the other responsibility roles, and these are known as duty holders. So, what are duty holders? There are new duty holder roles introduced into building regulation. Everyone who has a stake in a project, that's the client, the designers, the contractors, that have duties and arrangements and systems in place to manage and monitor both the design work and the building work to ensure compliance with building regulations. The duty to ensure compliance remains with those who procure the building work and those who have key roles in the design and construction process. Duty holders will be required to be competent to undertake their roles. This is quite a key factor. So individuals must demonstrate appropriate skills, knowledge, experience and behaviours, or SCEP as it's known, and organisations must demonstrate organisation capability. All the duty holders will be required to cooperate with each other, and that ensures that they coordinate their work and provide any information that's asked of them. On the screen now just shows you a breakdown of just some of the duty holder roles. I'm going to go down just through the main ones now individually, but the legislation that sets out the responsibility of the duty holders does come under the Building Safety Act, so please read that fully to find out what the role is and what it entails. So if we look at what the client is, the client are organisations or individual for whom a construction project is carried out that is done as part of their business. Their main duties, what they must do, make suitable arrangements for planning, managing and monitoring a project, including the allocation of sufficient time and resource to deliver compliance with building regulations. What this means is appointing the right people with the right competencies for the work and ensuring those that appoint have the systems in place to ensure they're meeting the building regulations. Where there are several firms working on different aspects of the project, the client will need to appoint a principal designer to be in control of design work and also a principal contractor to be in control of the building work. So let's have a look at these types of roles for designing. There's going to be a principal designer, a designer appointed by the client in projects involving more than one contractor. They can be an organisation or an individual with sufficient knowledge, experience and ability to carry out the role. Their main duties will be plan, manage and monitor the design work during the design phase. They will take all reasonable steps to ensure the design work carried out by them and anyone under their control is planned, managed, monitored, so the design is such that, if built, it will comply with all relevant requirements of the building regulations. So just to put that in concept, a principal designer will be in control of the design work and they may have designers that will carry out the design work, but the buck stops with the principal designer. The next main role is what's known as the principal contractor. Now, a principal contractor appointed again by the client will have to coordinate the construction phase of a project. Some of their main duties again will be to plan, manage and monitor the design work during the building stage. They will cooperate with the client, the principal designer and other designers and contractors to the extent necessary to ensure that the work complies with all the requirements of the building regulation. They will ensure that they and all those working on the project cooperate, communicate and coordinate their work with the client, the designer and anyone else designing. They will also ensure that anyone working for them will be compliant. So again, on the screen, to break that down, you'll have the principal contractor. They're going to be in control of the construction and refurbishment phase, and they're going to obviously have contractors and they will carry out the work. But again, the principal contractor is going to be the one that has to be in charge and responsible for everyone on site. I have and will be working very closely with duty holders to make sure that they meet their requirements. This is especially true for the design teams who need to engage with us early to ensure that they're going to meet the requirements of the gateways. Gateways, I hear you ask, what are they? So let's have a look. What are the gateways? The Building Safety Act has introduced and is introducing a series of decision stages for higher risk buildings. These are what's known as gateways. The gateways are there to ensure that the building safety has been properly considered at key stages of a project and that they require either consultation with health and safety executives or approval specifically from the building safety regulator. There are 3 gateways. These are Gateway 1, which is before planning permission is granted, Gateway 2, before building work can begin, and Gateway 3, before a building can be occupied. So let's look at the gateways in more detail. So there's Gateway 1. Now, Gateway 1 has actually been out for some time. It actually came into force in August 2021. So we've had some time and experience with this type of gateway. But what gateway requires is clients and developers to consider the fire strategy and safety needs of a project. This includes layout, safe escape routes, materials, safe access for firefighters, number of staircases, etc., etc. Reviews of submissions for Gateway 1, because it's been around for some time, has actually seen quite a high rejection rate. I've seen people already quote 60% or 70% failure rate at this very early stage. So this is quite worrying because this should hopefully be the easiest one out of the 3 stages. Currently, as I mentioned, hospital and care homes, which are classed as higher risk buildings, do not have to meet Gateway 1. Now, Gateway 2 was one of the gateways introduced in October, and this is the stage in which the building safety regulator must be satisfied that the building complies with all building regulations. Before building work starts, a building control approval application must be submitted to the building safety regulator and approved. The building safety regulator has 12 weeks to access an application for higher risk building work. So that's quite important to note, that you need to have all your correct paperwork in, and that the building safety regulator has 12 weeks to check it over and approval. So this must be factored into your timescales. The application must contain sufficient information to show how the building, when built, will satisfy all applicable functional requirements and demonstrate how you intend to manage the construction, stuff like this. You also need to include the evidence to support your building completion certification application. There's quite a lot of factors here. It's not as simple as just having a one-page document. There's quite a lot of information you need to put into this requirement at Gateway 2. This is where Quailfire are going to play quite key with main contractors, because we will be helping to provide the information and evidence for service penetration design, which is quite pivotal in a building. Okay, changes to the plan obviously may happen after you've had the approval. Okay, so when you make any changes to your design during the build phase, you'll need to have these logged into what's known as a change control log. Now, changes will be classed as 2 different things, either one, a major change, or a notifiable change. So the slight difference, I don't want to bog down this too deeply, is a major change is like sort of a change in material or the proposed use of a building and stuff like that. So for example, you might need to add another floor on, change the base, remove some walls, something that's majorly changing the building. Notifiable change is something that is not necessarily has to be reported straight away. It needs to be reported, but it's something that needs to be monitored and provided to building control so they can check it at the end stage. Is stuff that's like a change to the construction control plan, a slight change of a layout of a flat just to make things work. There might be some products that you may have had to change due to material shortages and stuff like that, so you found an equivalent product, something on that's not a major change, but something that does need to be checked and reviewed to make sure you're still compliant. So that brings us on to the final stage, which is Gateway 3. Now, Gateway 3 is the decision point when a building is completed. So you finished your building, it is now ready to be occupied, but before it can be occupied, you must satisfy the building safety regulator that you've built what you said you were going to build, and that it meets all relevant building regulations. So to get a completion certificate, you'll send off all your work. Building control then get to check everything, and if they are satisfied, they can issue this. Occupation is still not allowed until the building safety regulator is satisfied and issues then a completion certificate, and then the building is subsequently registered. This would be determined within 8 weeks. So again, if you think about time frames, at the end of your building, you could have up to 8 weeks or even longer before it can be occupied. So again, this needs to be factored in, and it is vital that when you hand in on your information, you get it right the first time, because you do not want to be delaying the process. Okay. Building safety regulator will then also carry out any final inspections of the building work, and they will assess whether the completion certificate definitely meets all the requirements. And if they have, you're good to go. The gateways, in my opinion, are an important aspect, and one well deserved with the new introduction of the requirements. Here at Quailfire, we're very strong ambassadors of early engagement, and we've always strived that it's very important to design a building prior to the build stage. So with the gateways, although it's focused at higher risk buildings, I actually feel it would be very useful for all type of buildings. One of the key aspects to gateways is sharing and showing evidence. And how we're going to be doing this is using what's called the golden thread of information. So let's dive into that and explain what is the golden thread of information. The Building Safety Act introduces the concept of golden thread of information. Bit of a buzzword in the industry, but let's have a look at what it means. And this is being put together to provide a complete record of the design, the construction and occupation of a higher risk building. The golden thread is both the information that allows you to understand a building and the steps needed to keep both the building and people safe now, but also more importantly in the future. The information you must keep must be proportionate and will depend on what stage the building is in its life. If you keep way too much information, it might be difficult to find the information you need when it's needed. So it must be proportionate and accurate. While the building is being designed and built, you will need to keep the information that describes the building and show it complies with the building regulations. The golden thread will hold the information that those responsible for the building required to show that the building was compliant with the applicable building regulations during its construction. They provide evidence of meeting the requirements of the new building control route throughout the design and construction and refurbishment of a building. It will identify, understand, manage and mitigate building safety risks in order to prevent or reduce the severity of the consequences of fire spread or structural collapse throughout the life cycle of the building. Your building's information must be kept digitally, and there are a number of different ways to do this. It must be kept securely. It must be a building's single source of truth, available to people who need the information to do their job, available when a person needs the information, and it must be presented in a way that a person can use and, more importantly, understand. The information stored in the golden thread will be reviewed and managed so that the information retained at all times. The golden thread covers both the information in documents and the information management processes used to support building safety. The building thread information management approach will apply through design, construction, occupation, refurbishment and ongoing management of the building. It supports the wider changes in the regime to promote a culture of building safety. Building safety should be taken to include the fire and structural safety of a building and the safety of all people in or in the vicinity of a building, including emergency responders, the people that have to enter the building when it can be deemed unsafe. Many people will need to access the golden thread to update and share golden thread information throughout a building's life cycle, including but not limited to building managers, architects, contractors, and many others. Is quite a long list. So information from the golden thread will also need to be shared by the accountable person with other relevant people, including residents and emergency responders. So that brings us to the end of burning questions. Like I mentioned earlier in the video, all the information that I've used to sort of source this information will be linked in the description of the video. However, it doesn't have to end here. Please check out our other videos because we're always sharing information and advice. And also we have a dedicated Knowledge Hub page on our website that have key questions that our technical team constantly receive. You can feel free to get in touch with our technical team. We'll always be happy to help. Our contact details will appear on the screen. And for now, thank you very much.